on to Shan.
I was in a bit of a similar position where it came to kind of entering the working world feeling very hopeless because of the pandemic. Similar to Poppie, was just like applying and applying and applying for different places, did some freelance pitching and like varying levels of success, like got to the interview stage with some things and then for other things just flat out ghosted by whoever you're applying for. And I did that on multiple levels too, like I was going from regional to national magazines and stuff. I actually ended up getting my current job through Twitter, which I feel like is like an encouraging and discouraging thing to hear at the same time. Moya Lothian McLean, I don't know if I feel like she's quite a prominent presence on like journalism Twitter, and I'm sure a lot of you follow her. She tweeted out that the Indie 100 are always looking for kind of new people to join them on like a kind of casual basis, and that they like embrace diversity and that they're really nice. And I saw the tweet had loads of interactions, so I was like, no way. And it was like interactions with people I considered to be like way more qualified than I am. So I was like, no way, not doing this. And I woke up the next day and my attitude towards it just completely changed. I was like, why not? Like, you're not getting anywhere else with like the stuff you are applying for at nationals, so why not try it a more informal way? So I sent them an email. I didn't hear anything for about a month, and then come December they asked me to like hop onto a Zoom with them for a little chat, and it was really informal to the point where I didn't realize I'd been offered a job. It like took me a little while to realize that like that had happened. And then when that had happened, I think once this is still quite recent, but like once they saw how I was doing and stuff, I was just given more and more opportunities to work with them. And now I divide my time between them and Euronews. And Euronews is just as recent as yesterday. I started there yesterday during the whole spinach debacle meme thing. So that was quite fun. But that's too recent for me to probably talk about. But yeah, Indeed was quite an informal experience and weird contrast to the like innumerable applications that I'd been kind of getting through from like August to December.
Okay, yeah, thanks very much for that as well. So obviously, we're talking about kind of like, breaking into the industry in a year and a bit when it's been more than challenging, I think is to say kind of like the least as well. So for the panel here as well, what kind of like challenges and successes would you say that you've had during this time? I'll start with Poppy this time.
Yeah, so I think challenges, it's harder just to like build relationships with people. So I started Bloomberg and Telegraph now both in the pandemic, so they've both been remote so far. And it's like so much harder to build lasting relationships and like a network and get sources and stuff. But then also I think it probably makes certain stuff a bit easier. Like it gives you a lot more freedom in where you can work from, So I've been at home in Birmingham for the full year. I am moving to London in like 2 weeks, but I would have never been able to do that, if it wasn't in the pandemic. So that bit of it, I suppose, has made life a tiny bit easier. But I think the main thing, it's harder to get like that newsroom experience that a lot of places definitely like make a point of asking for. So that's really hard for like everyone applying for jobs right now. But I think because everyone's on their phone all the time, it's just like putting yourself out there more on Twitter and like making a way of doing freelance, like replying to like big names on Twitter with a journalist, like replying to their articles and being like, oh, great article, like first name, even if they don't know who you are. And it just makes them like recognize your name. And I think, yeah, you've got more scope to like freelance to anywhere because you're not as maybe wrapped up in like a social element of like the normal world. Do you know what I mean? So you've got a bit more time to like reflect. But I do think it's hard to, as well with that, like switch off. Like I'm one of those people that's on my phone all day, every day, So it's hard to like get the work day separated. I think that's definitely been harder in the pandemic.
And I think just to add to that as well, that just touching on just based on some of the things that you just said there as well, though. So with the team that you currently work with in your role, have you actually met them, or has everything pretty much been remote?
Yeah, no. So we've not met yet. So there's 6 of us on the grad scheme, and like none of us have met in real life before. So a few of them, like when you like know people from Twitter and you follow them for years, so it's like Twitter friends. So like I know a few of them like through that, but no, we've never met in real life, and I've never met any of my editors or anything. So we've just been on Zoom, which is weird. But
Is Chris okay?
muted.
Yeah, I was just waiting for the actual new host now to unmute me there as well, though. Sorry, Poppy, I just wanted to just add to that as well, though, just to give people a sense of what the experience has been like for you as well, though. So, obviously you haven't met the team as well, though. So, aside from the obvious, I know Zoom, Teams, etc., what is the team doing to try and create that social element, around the work?
So I'm still in training at the moment. I only started in like the middle of January, but
Yeah.
got basically like 5 hours a day as just like Zoom calls with different editors. So we'll have like an hour with the news editor, an hour with the chief reporter, an hour with the features editor, an hour. So it's like constant, but they have been really good. So like, like you can ring them, like get people to speak to you like that. We've all got like WhatsApp chats and we've had like a few like Zoom socials, which I know are very out of fashion now, and I don't want to be doing them, but must. So we've had things like that to try and build it up a bit more. But yeah, I think it's just rather than like we've not had as much maybe like independent time to like work on stuff as we would have done in the office. They've tried to make it like or everything's on Zoom, so we're like looking at each other. But yeah, that's mostly how we've done it. But it's been quite good so far. It's obviously not ideal, but I imagine it's better than some.
Great, thanks, Poppy. And it's like you said there as well, because I mean, sometimes you're in a physical kind of like team meeting, someone will say something, and then an idea will kind of like pop up, whereas sometimes that's not so much the case, within the kind of like Zoom Teams network type thing as well. Great, thank you. Moving on to Shan as well. So again, challenges and successes that you've had during this, difficult time, I suppose, really, last year and a bit.
I mean, challenges, like, I think it got to about like November time, and I was like, screw it, I'll just work in like PR or something. this is really not going the way that I thought it might. Like, I didn't. I think the NCGJ is fantastic, but the trouble with it is that it sets you up with this mentality that when you exit it, you are immediately employable. Like all these publications are going to want you, because they do. Like, especially with PA, I did placements at some really like cool places and stuff, and they drill this mentality into your head that like it's a very natural progression from NCTJ to a job. So when that didn't happen for a few months, obviously because of what's going on, I was genuinely considering like maybe branching out elsewhere. I'm glad I didn't, but I understand that I'm in a very privileged position where I'm not like renting anywhere at the moment, where like the financial stresses would have meant that I'd had to do that a lot sooner. In terms of successes, I think, like Poppy was saying, the pandemic's encouraged a lot of younger journalists to like support each other more via Twitter. I found that like to be really, really nice. And like even like Zoya and I had a phone call a few months ago when I was really like frustrated about like the direction like my freelancing was going and stuff, and she was really helpful. And I think that it's created this environment where people are like leaning on each other more and like uplifting each other's work. And I think maybe if we weren't in a pandemic, things would be a bit more competitive, because I feel like I've seen a shift in the way that like journalism Twitter operates on social media over the past year for sure. So that's definitely a success.
Just going back to one of the challenges that you mentioned there as well, so it sounded like there was kind of like a lot of applications you were putting in, kind of like the effort kind of like above and beyond. So what was the turning point for you, before deciding that no, PR is not for me?
And again, this is Zoya's been very helpful. When we had a call, she said, give yourself a time limit as to when you stop working for free. Because I was still writing, and I'm sure a lot of student journalism, like students like do that. That's the whole thing. You write for free until you don't. And then you hope that you never have to go back to writing for free again. So Zoya was like, give yourself a time limit as to when you like say to yourself, I'm not going to write for free anymore. And I set that, and unfortunately got a job before that kind of period expired. So that's kind of how it went.
That's brilliant. So that clearly works as well. That kind of like tip and kind of bit of advice there as well. To like set that kind of like limit and then work at it kind of like from there. And like you said, luckily that did come to fruition as well though. So good.
And I think I would advise anyone kind of listening in to, especially when you're at university, like be really patient about it. Like I was only being impatient because I guess it felt like a lot of time had passed, and the pandemic obviously makes things just like feel that way. But I would definitely advise be patient with it. Like don't start, like don't get your first pitch rejected and suddenly think, oh god, this isn't for me. Or like I think persistence is so key.
Great, thank you. And then on to Zoya as well. There's quite a nice lead in from Shan there as well, because I think you guys have been talking and getting on as well. So yeah, what challenges and successes have you kind of like faced during this time as well?
I think the main challenge was graduating and then realizing the journalism industry, so to speak, was kind of going into decline. And everyone was like, oh, you're getting a degree now? And I was like, yeah, just paid 10K, got my degree, this is great. While all that was happening, obviously, inevitably, there was the talk about whether print was continuing and, all of that. So it can be pretty demoralizing to kind of put all yourself into this, or your work ethic, or your time, and for people, or you can just hear that conversation of the industry supposedly going downhill. But I think within that, I don't necessarily think it's going downhill. I think it's adapting, it's changing. There's new experiences, new opportunities everywhere. I think especially on Twitter, like it is pretty tricky to balance your time on there because you can see so much happening so quickly, and you kind of inevitably might compare yourself to other people. But for one, I would say don't do that. It's not healthy. But also there's a bunch of opportunities, freelance. People are willing to chat to you. I got to know Shan, I follow Poppie as well. Like we all know of each other. And I'm sure if I dropped any of them a message for advice or whatever, they'd happily, tell me what to do or kind of draw on their own experiences. So that's definitely a benefit that kind of came from a negative, if that makes sense. I also think within that, the online kind of side of things has changed. It was a bit strange initially, but people have realized, camaraderie works way better, and it's better to uphold a bunch of people rather than kind of separate. And within that, there's been a lot of growth towards representation and diversity in journalism, as we know, is a pretty big issue. So and then to go to positives, I would say freelance has definitely been easier in a way, because there's a lot more advice going around, people are willing to chat more. I think editors are at a point where they want to kind of get new writers in the door, kind of to see what's going on. So I've had a lot of my first opportunities that way. A lot of editors ended up following me after I got my job, so they kind of virtually knew who I was, which is a great segue to like introduce yourself, or if they know they'll be into something because you've seen what they posted, you can kind of use that to your benefit. So yeah, I'd say those are my positives and negatives.
Yeah, that's a good kind of like list there as well. And it's really kind of like good to hear, I suppose, in a sense that social media is being used as kind of like a really positive network, to get kind of like people together and get kind of like young journalists and groups together as well. So at least something positive is coming out of it as well. Though, and I think again you've hit the nail on the head there when you said that whilst you're in your current role, other editors were obviously picking up on your work as well, obviously during this time, which is really good. Okay, thanks very much as well. So moving on, kind of like to the next question, and what I will do is I'll just stop there as well. I've seen some of the Q&As on the message chat as well. What we'll do is, if you have got any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or we can basically address them right at the end in a little Q&A session as well. So we'll do that as well. So we'll we'll move on to the next question as well. So it kind of like touches on some of the themes that we've been talking about already as well. So, how have you adapted, on this panel in terms of kind of like job hunting, but also networking as well, though, obviously, during the pandemic. So we'll start with Shen.
Adapting's been really weird because I got to spend the first 8 weeks of my 18-week NCTJ in an office. We were getting to talk face to face with like professionals that have been doing this for decades. So that was really fun and exciting. And when that got cut short in March, when everything happened, like Panny D, whatever, like it was really hard to adjust to first. I do think we keep centering the conversation around Twitter, but I think it has to be stressed that is the essential tool. In terms of adapting, I think the pandemic's made me less afraid to approach people head on and just flat out ask them about opportunities. Like, I don't think a year ago I would have DM'd an editor, or like, not, I don't like DM, sorry, scratch that. I don't like DMing editors about work stuff, an email. I might DM like another reporter, but maybe a year ago I wouldn't have emailed an editor like straight up and asked about opportunities and stuff. So I think that's been crucial to adapting, just being a bit more fearless and realizing that there aren't any real consequences to like someone either ignoring you or not giving you the response that you want. And actually I've found, fortunately, that maybe 8 out of 10 times it goes a lot better than I thought it would. So
yeah, I think that's a really good kind of like key takeaway from that as well, though, isn't it? I think this kind of like time, by the sounds of it, has allowed you to be kind of like a bit more forward, hasn't it, as well? And it's like you said, the old adage, kind of like, if you don't ask, you don't get, type of thing. And also, like you said, the worst thing that can happen is that they don't get back to you as well, but it is always worth a shot as well. So almost kind of like, I like that really good bit of advice there is, challenge yourself and ask those questions. Brilliant, thank you. And Zoya?
Can you recap the question?
I can, yeah, no problem as well. So it's just a case of how you've adapted to job hunting and networking in this time.
Yeah, sure. So job hunting, like I said kind of previously, I was pretty fortunate, but while I was doing it, so when I was at City, we kind of wrapped things up just as kind of the virus stuff was kicking in. So we were with people, I got to do my internships in person. 1 or 2 I didn't, just because they were cautious. And then after that, I saw my job advertisement on Instagram. So in that respect, adapting, kind of, it didn't necessarily have much of a change because I started off virtual. We got to go into the office, which was a nice change because it's a lot easier to actually focus, and you have an allocated space to do your work and you associate that with your job. But working from home, everywhere is kind of everything. And making a magazine with your editors and actually seeing people and going to shoots is, has its benefits of you get to meet cool people, but it's, you're in that creative space, and it encourages you to want to do a good job, and you enjoy it more. So then from having everything virtual to being there and then now being removed from it again, it is pretty difficult to adapt, I'd say. But if you're kind of wanting advice from people, I mean, not to go back to social media, but that has definitely been like a pretty safe space. People are always willing to listen and help out. And it is a bit frustrating having to do, interviews on Zoom when you're accustomed to meeting people, and you get that connection with someone more authentically and organically, and you can kind of pull on your environment, and it's easier to have a conversation. But virtually, it's a bit tricky because if someone's internet cuts out, if there's a noise outside, all the kind of stuff that can happen. It can make things hard. So I think adapting will come in intuitively. You kind of realize that you've got to continue regardless. A magazine has to be made, so you've got to do it. But yeah, it's strange, but there's also lessons to it as well. I've become way more comfortable on camera. I've been I feel like I fine-tuned my interview skills because there's not a lot you can translate, I'd say. over Zoom that you can necessarily in real life. So yeah, I'd say as inconvenient as it is, there's still positives to it.
Brilliant, thank you. And moving on to Poppy, I'll just repeat the question again as well. Just basically how you've adapted to job hunting and networking during this time.
Yeah, so like Zoya said, I was finishing my MA at the beginning of the pandemic, but I was quite lucky, I suppose, with like placements, because I did most of my work experience placements the year before that. So I'd already done them, before the pandemic started. And then my last unpaid one actually was at The Guardian, and it was the week that lockdown started. So I was in the office on the Friday when everyone got sent home. So it was like, oh my God, yeah. And we all thought that we were going to get 2 weeks of lockdown and be back to normal. Harder virtually, like my Bloomberg one was in real life, but then the entire internship was online. My Telegraph interview, I had 2, and one of them was virtual, which was so weird because it's like I wore a suit and stuff for this interview, and you could only see like the top bit of my shoulder, But I think still preparing the same way you would for a real life one, still like getting the same headspace, do all the same level of research and stuff, still like dress up nice and like listen to music before to get yourself in the mood, because you're still going to stress yourself out. Like that doesn't change on Zoom, I don't think. But in terms of, yeah, and then I had one in real life actually after that. It was when like the world got a bit normal in like September before it shut down again. But I think with networking, like I know we've all said it, but Twitter definitely is the easiest one. And like I get in a bit of shit for Twitter sometimes because I'm just not very professional on there, and I just tweet about TV constantly and like being drunk and stuff. But yeah, I think just follow everybody on there. Like everybody uses it. It can be a bit, like you can compare yourself to people on there, but I think in the pandemic, people have definitely like gotten nicer and like everyone's a bit more helpful. Because I think journalism it's inherently competitive, because there's so few jobs and so many people wanting to do it. There's like that stereotype, isn't there, of like crazy, competitive, 20 placement, like bitchy people. But Twitter's not like that, I don't think, at the moment. Especially like everyone's super helpful. Like all the young community are like really vocal, and everyone's helping that out. And I think in like for networking with like maybe more senior people and just like random people you could use in the future, I never used to use LinkedIn because I don't think many journalists do. Like it's more Twitter, isn't it? But I've got like 4,000 people on LinkedIn now. Like once a week on like a Sunday, I like search job titles. So I'll just put in like a newspaper and then go on people and add every single person that works at that paper, and do the same for like policy, like a HM Treasury, like I don't know, the civil service, the Navy, like the most random jobs ever, and like add all them. And it actually comes quite useful because you've got people then like already on there that you can get like email addresses and phone numbers from. But yeah, I think on Twitter, just be nice to people as well. Like, even if somebody puts a tweet out saying, oh, I'm having a shit day, and you don't know who they are, just reply like, say, oh, I hope you're okay, because people will see your replies. Obviously do it sincerely, don't do it to like look like you're a saint, But just put yourself out there and like be nice to other people. If people like message you, ask, like for help, message people and say, oh, have you got any advice about this? Because people will respond. I've been doing it for years, and most people are nice about it. So yeah, sorry if I ramble.
No, that's okay as well. There's a couple of questions that I've seen on the messages section that I am going to touch on in a second as well. But I just wanted to ask a follow up on what you said there as well, to how like a social media platform like Twitter has become somewhat of a kind of like a safe go-to space, for people within the industry as well. This is one for all three of you here as well. How do you separate the personal from the professional on social media platforms? And by that I mean, kind of like away from having two separate accounts. What's the remit for kind of like doing that?
I don't really. No, that's so bad to say, but obviously it's like completely professional. Facebook like is private, like it's all on private. I have different names and stuff on there. Instagram I'm on private, so I don't use that for work. But with Twitter, I think you can definitely tweet with personality, and even like this is, I think people probably with newspapers, like the Telegraph's obviously seen as quite stuffy, but I don't think they care if I tweet about like TV or like going out and being hungover or whatever. I think it's more like, I'm trying to think of an example. Like over summer when I was at Bloomberg, I think I tweeted something about Trump, and I got like a Bloomberg DM from an editor, like, we're supposed to be completely politically neutral. And I was like, I didn't know anybody was not neutral about Trump. Like, and it wasn't anything bad. It was just like, you know, like, I really, yeah. But I think maybe I just like keep stuff like that to a side. But if you believe in stuff, you know, and you've got strong opinions on things, that's what makes you a good journalist, I think, anyway. So be open about it. Don't be afraid to like, don't think that you've got to have one of those Twitters where it's just like facts and like coronavirus statistics, because unless you've got 100,000 followers, people are probably going to go to like the BBC for that anyway.
Yeah, to add to what Poppy was saying, I find it so hard, and I'm actually resorted to just flat out tweeting like once a week most of the time, because I used to use Twitter like in quite like a, I don't know, I would always say like my diary, because that sounds a bit wet, but like I never used to think about what I tweeted, because I had like an audience of like 80 people, not that it's much bigger now, and I was just like would tweet any old thing. So I made a new Twitter when I started to take this more seriously, and I think it does hold you back a little bit. I hate the precedent of impartiality that a lot of publications have, and I'm actually surprised that an editor would think to DM you, Poppy, about it. I've never heard of that happening to anyone apart from maybe at the BBC, because that's a whole different story. So yeah, it's really hard, and I want to get better at it, because I actually really admire when someone like an editor at a national title that I follow that has like a considerable following will like just say something you're not expecting them to say, like, I don't know, something about how hungover they are, or like, I don't know, like I don't know, I think it makes them more accessible, and it makes them like feel like you could probably respond to stuff that they're talking about. There's like less of a divide. So I want to work my way towards that, but it is really hard. And I am considering making a private again, just to like feel less stressed about, not that there's anything controversial to say. Like I'd say, like again, in Poppy's case, I wouldn't say being anti-Trump on Twitter is like a particularly like radical viewpoint. But I guess to some places it is. So yeah, I don't know. It's a really, really tricky one to balance. And I think the more of a following you have, I think the more people, I've noticed that people with considerable kind of followings maybe worry about it a little bit less at certain titles, because it's like you've got to that stage in your career now, like you're not going to get a DM from an editor like shut up. They're just going to accept that that's kind of part of your brand almost. So yeah, really tricky one to balance.
To add like my perspective and kind of experience, I've been pretty lucky because we're a magazine and, you know, we're pro LGBTQ. So, you know, I'm going to have a few opinions, but it's about J.K. Rowling or, you know, trans erasure or whatever. I'm going to say it because I believe it. And I'd be surprised if my editor were to turn around and say, Zoya, what is this? Because, you know, it's like Sharon said, like it's my brand at this point. And I say it in articles and I say it in tweets, so it's kind of just reaffirming something. And I might say it informally online, but as I feel like as long as you repackage it professionally in your articles, it's kind of okay. But I would say, you know, be responsible, because it's very easy to get lost in kind of the view of it's just you and your mates or whoever seeing your content, but your content is publicly available. It's, you know, your future employee could see it, an editor of an editor could see it, you know, you don't necessarily know the repercussions, and it's very easy to forget. I fortunately haven't had any issues, but I think just reminding myself before I post something and consider, you know, would it affect freelancing? Would it affect something in the work? You know, just to be mindful, because you don't know the implications of a post, even if you have like great intentions, but you might word or phrase things poorly, and you know it could go viral for like all the wrong reasons, and it's not in your control, it's not your fault, and it wasn't your intention. So yeah, my advice would be, you know, be mindful. If you've got, you know, really controversial kind of out there opinions, possibly don't post them or have a separate account. And it sounds bizarre to say, but just kind of be logical, even though it's social media, because if you're using that Twitter as a kind of a professional face, or like as your online persona, you've got to be responsible with it.
I just wanted to add to what Zoya was saying, because I think she's in a really cool position where, like, I think Gay Times, you know, you're not going to get told off for like doing anything overtly political, because I think the nature of your work is quite political. And I always envisioned that maybe early on in my paid career that I would have to take some like risks when it comes to like the political alignments of the publications that I wrote for. Luckily, that hasn't had to happen. Like with, and I think that's a common myth, that you kind of have to sacrifice your like morals or whatever to get a foot in the door. Like I know the Mail Online like grad scheme is like super successful because you're basically a hamster on a wheel for 2 years. Sorry to anyone that's ever like been on them. I mean, not sorry really, but I'm glad that's never had to happen, and I know it can't happen for everyone, but I do think it's a bit of a myth. Like my tutors at the NCTJ kind of told us that in order to get a job after this, like we should expect to probably write somewhere that like we don't share the same values as. And I think myself and my peers would probably disagree. Like Indie 100 do not care about what I pitched that day. If anything, they encourage, a lot of their work is geared towards like left-wing politics. So if I pitch like a listicle like 10 times Sean Hannity was an absolute moron on Fox, they're not going to be like, oh, weird. They're going to say, oh, that's great. Like that's going to do really well with our audience. So I just wanted to kind of take apart that myth a little bit, because I kind of entered the working world with like my teeth gritted, thinking that I was going to have to like maybe write stuff that I didn't necessarily want to write. So just wanted to kind of extend that from social media to like actual content.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense as well. Yeah, I think that was a good kind of like addition there as well. Well, thanks for that as well.
I don't know if you guys have anything else to add in terms of like content. I didn't want to like talk too much about it.
I was gonna say so what Shantz like just said about like the political side of it, I think it is definitely like there are certain places where I always said like I wouldn't work, like and I think that's quite a privileged position to be in. I think when it got to the point last year, I was like, actually, I've got no money at all. Like it's either maybe get a job places, or like there are certain places that I do like to think like I just wouldn't really be happy at, not even because of maybe get views, just because they seem like not very like supportive places to work. But I think, I don't know, it's a hard one. I think a lot of the time like, with Telegraph, that like a lot of their young reporters are just not what you see on like the columns and stuff. Refreshing to see like how like how different it is to maybe what the perceptions are. But I do think as a news reporter, and like that's what I am doing mostly now, like you should try and be neutral, just because you won't get given certain stories if you're too explicit in like who you vote for, say, because you won't be allowed into the lobby if you've got a political affiliation, like, and that's something to look forward to in the future. Like you wouldn't be able to get a high up politics job if you were aligned with a party. So I think it can be hard, but like definitely have opinions and like views and stuff, but don't stick yourself in one bit, because like, there's no jobs. And I think it's harder than ever, especially with nationals, like there's not many out there. So that'd be mine.
And then, yeah, just changing gear from one bit to another there as well. Just going to go on to one of the questions that has popped up from Elise, I think it was as well. And this is a general one for the panel here as well, though. What do you think about NCTJ versus a master's degree?
I don't mind starting, because I think these guys both took the master's route, which I definitely would have done if I'd like got a degree. Like I did the whole uni thing but didn't come out of it with a degree, so that was totally fine, and I've no regrets about that. And I was fortunate enough that I had the experience behind me to get taken on for the NCTJ, which obviously put me in a really like decent position. I think but either's fine. I know that you can get undergrads that are NCTJ accredited. I think they're cool. Probably like the wrong place to say that now to like people that are currently student journalists. You can't change your bachelor, I imagine. Anyway, I don't think there's anything wrong with doing one or the other. I haven't done a master's, so I can't say whether it's any better than NCTJ. I think an NCTJ is a really good way of like getting it done faster. But I understand that there are barriers to doing that. Like I could only do it because I got given a bursary to do it by the Journalism Diversity Fund. I thoroughly recommend it to anyone that thinks that they're going to be held back financially from getting their training, because their criteria is a lot kinder than you think. So I think some people think, oh well, I can't possibly qualify because of X, Y, and Z, and I think it's definitely something worth considering. So I would absolutely rep the NCTJ. I think it was great, but I completely understand why people go down the master's route too. I think, yeah. I don't know about you guys, because you guys are, yeah.
Okay, nice. Yeah, so I was at City. City do like a variety of MAs. So there's like, pretty sure there's a politics one, there's definitely newspaper, there's something global and international, and then there's magazine, which is what I did, which you'd think would be quite narrow in its scope, given its title, and would be kind of stupid to go for, given the state of magazines right now. But yeah, I kind of knew that was going to be my vibe early on. And yeah, I would say it was pretty broad, to be honest. A lot of our modules overlapped with other courses. So I didn't do an NCTGA one, and City didn't offer us it. And like, to be clear about it in advance, I think might be beneficial to some people, because a lot of them, a lot of people applied thinking it was integrated when it's not. Other universities do offer integrated. So, you know, check them out. Don't just think, you know, because City does have, you know, this kind of prestige about it. A lot of people talk about it. It's very kind of industry talk. We're fortunate that we got offered kind of applications to certain schemes, and, you know, that happens with a lot of universities. So it kind of depends where they fall. But yeah, City didn't offer an NCTJ. And for magazine, you kind of don't necessarily need one, because, you know, I won't be doing what Poppy does. Like, we do news, but it's kind of a different take on news. We won't be in kind of courtrooms. We won't be doing anything like that. But they did offer shorthand, so that was an optional module, which for a lot of reporters they do end up using it, because you may need to, like, you know, cover something really quick. But I didn't take it as well, so that's another thing. A lot of my mates on the course did, and a lot of them use it, but I didn't, and I haven't had to use it. So as if you're looking to go into a magazine, you know, it's not 100% necessary. And I didn't consider an NTC. Oh God, what is it? NCTGA.
NCTJ.
Yeah. So yeah, if I'm talking personally, I didn't necessarily have to, and things worked out. A lot of the jobs that I applied for didn't necessarily ask for one, and I found that pretty common in magazine as well.
I actually did both. So the Sheffield course is like integrated with an NCTJ. But so I got a master's loan for the master's part of it, and then the JDF also funded like my NCTJ, so they paid for that and my living expenses. But I think in hindsight, I probably would have just done the NCTJ, because I think that's all I needed really. Like, I really enjoyed my MA, you know, and Sheffield was great, and I met loads of friends there. But I think everything you need for like job applications, I probably would have just gotten with the NCTJ, like shorthand and media law and stuff. And with my, I think especially at the moment, like obviously praying to God that this is over in a few months, but if like MA courses were to be virtual, I think it probably would be better for like money wise to just do an NCTJ remotely, because it's like half the price. They're like £5,000 compared to 10, you know, and like I think you do learn everything on that. I think some jobs I applied for did ask for it, so I think like a Times grad scheme asked for it, like a Telegraph doesn't. So like 4 of us on it have done the NCTJ, and the other 2 people on the scheme haven't. So they're doing like in-house shorthand and media law training, because we have to do shorthand. But like I've still not passed. I'm still not at 100. I've been doing it for like a year and 2 months, and I am still at like 70. I'm absolutely rubbish at it. But I think the NCTJs, maybe it depends what you go into, like Zoya said, because you know, with like magazine and features, you just don't need it. I don't think personally, like people don't ask for that. But with news reporting, I think shorthand's definitely expected. Like even now, like maybe at certain places, because you can't report in court, you know, without shorthand. Not that many people do that anymore, but you can't go into court with a tape recorder, so that definitely helps. And I don't know, yeah, I suppose it's also nice. It's like the industry reckon body, so I definitely check with any MAs you're applying for, just to check that they do have it included, because I think like Zoya said, some maybe, you know, you'd expect them to do it and they don't. But I don't know. Yeah, my NCTJ, it's like quite weird exams. Shan's probably thinks the same, but I'd never. So I'm a news reporter now and like news and still do features and culture stuff. But before my MA, I'd only done like music writing and like culture, like, you know, books and TV, a bit of politics. but my NCTJ was like the first time I'd ever done proper like man 52 ran over in St. Thomas Street, you know. But I think it helped so much with writing, because I used to be such a long-winded writer. Like I'd write massive paragraphs, you know, and always use big words and stuff. So the NCTJ helped, I think, in that, you know, like 20-word paragraphs and like 8-word headlines, and just that like really to the point news writing. So yeah, again, rambly.
No, I don't think it's rambly at all. And I just wanted to branch off what you were saying, Poppy, because I didn't realize you'd done both. So it's interesting you get to contrast both. Yeah, the NCTJ does whip you into shape, doesn't it? Like it's like they play you a 2-minute audio clip about something that's happened, and then they sit you down. They're like, you have an hour to write about this.
Yeah.
400 words. If it's bad, like that's a problem.
Yeah.
So that's really useful. But I'm sure like with the masters and stuff, I think it probably goes a bit more in depth. Like I think the NCTJ is almost like, here is everything you need to know, and then all the add-ons come with you actually getting a job. Whilst I think like Zoya is like saying that with City, they encourage you to do lots of work while you're doing the masters, is like really interesting.
Just to actually add on that, to give a bit of context, and to what Poppy said, in terms of cost, especially if you're kind of not able to do things physically, I would consider an NT. I can't say it again, but you know, just because whilst I was at City, I got to experience it all there. We were on campus every time. I had to move down to London and everything. So it was the kind of the experience you would expect, really. And a lot of it was hands-on. So we had a InDesign module. We had like a film module, so we'd know how to kind of create kind of like little photo bits and like video clips that you might need to include in an article, whether it be news, whether it be feature. There was a bunch of stuff like with InDesign, we actually had to, as students, create our own magazine, which got printed and we distributed to journalists and stuff. So that experience you kind of can't trade, because it's definitely set me up in good stead for what I do now, because we have to do similar stuff. So that worked out. But if you kind of were doing that like virtually and remotely, you don't get the opportunity, you don't get the chance to kind of be with the team and do everything. You don't get taught by your lecturers how to film whatever it is, or what these components of a camera are, or what kind of settings you need and stuff. It's difficult. You're basically kind of doing it through YouTube. So I would say if you're trying to be kind of careful financially, I would say go for the other option. But obviously research and kind of make that decision yourself. Please don't take it from, you know, my word.
No, totally got that. And I think that was a good point to kind of like just end on there as well. That like, you know, just make sure that, you know, you do your research as well, though, isn't it? Really, really good point as well. Because, you know, I think one of the things that we've noted from this is that different institutions obviously offer, you know, different options as well. I'm just mindful of time, and I wanted to get a few of the questions in, you know, from the guests that we've got in today as well. So one of them, which is almost a segue from what we were just talking about anyway, is, you know, how do you gain work experience or an internship in journalism during this time, you know, with the current lockdown restrictions? Like, for example, it's Florence has mentioned that they're currently doing a master's in journalism, but would like to gain some, you know, actual experience in the field. You know, so how do they go about that, you know, during this time? I'll start off with Poppy.
Yeah, so I think I've got a few tips, but I am at freelancing is probably your easiest in at the moment, because, you know, there's no, like, newsrooms probably aren't going to let you go into the office, like they're not even open for reporters. So I think freelancing, like, I'm always happy. I've still got like loads of emails of random people at different nationals if like anybody wants over. But yeah, like freelancing different ideas, and maybe just going in with certain stories that you're going to have a like special angle on. So, you know, any first person stuff like opinion, but don't feel like you can only pitch opinion, like really traumatic personal pieces, because I think that's so bad for young writers. Like they feel they can only do that. But like education stories, like culture stuff, like they're always quite open to new voices if you've got a special angle. And I know Reach are doing virtual work experience. So My London, the publication, they're offering like actual work experience, but on Zoom. So it might be worth applying for that as well. But yeah, just reach out to editors and see if you can help them like with transcriptions or like research, because that would be really helpful and they'd really appreciate it. Not even editors, you know, if you just see a reporter that you like at any publication, message them, introduce yourself and say, oh, I'm doing a master's at the moment, I can't get any placements. would you ever be happy to like have a chat on Zoom? And you know, I'm happy to do any research for articles that you're working on, things like that.
Thanks, Poppie. And Zoya?
Yeah, I basically agree with Poppy. It is tricky, and I do empathise. I know a few places do work experience. So one of the places I did mine at City, which had to be remote, you know, given the circumstance, was Clash. I did that for, I think it was 2 weeks. And that was all virtual. So a lot of it was my editor just kind of chucking me press releases and was like, can you write this up into a story? And, you know, it's kind of typical work experience. You can do a lot of news. And then, you know, once you establish your style, you get familiar with the publication or whatever, they'll probably like send a feature your way or an interview or whatever it is. To be honest, a lot of my experience falls into culture and music. So that's kind of the insight I can give. But yeah, I would have to agree with Poppy. Like, it is tricky right now. So I would email. And also, like, if you're realizing whether you do experience or you just feel like you're equipped, like, there's no shame in just emailing an editor a pitch. And if you get a rejection, you can always follow up saying, you know, would you be willing to give me advice? And that's what I did early on. And they'd genuinely be happy to give, you know, constructive criticism, because, you know, next time you send them a pitch, is going to be more informed. It saves them time from having to, you know, work through more stuff. So whether it's making something more concise or whatever, and that skill set will lend itself to your news writing or culture writing or whatever it is, because you'll be more efficient with your words and your time. So just be mindful, like, whatever you pick up is transferable. If I can think of any others that I took part in, I will drop them in the chat. But yeah, definitely give Clash a shout.
And Shan?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with these guys and Zoe too, because I also did Clash for a fortnight because their editor is really good at that type of thing, and he tweeted out at the beginning of pandemic, if anyone's had their internships cancelled, please email me. So I would look for people that are like, I don't really know what you'd want to aim for with keywords, but I would like just keep your eye on editors and stuff, even if they're looking for shifts and stuff. I would also aim a little bit like smaller. Like, I think Poppy's example of My London's really good. Like, they're still a growing reach publication stuff. So while you might fancy your chances at like the Mirror or something, like the Mirror don't even have their reporters in office and stuff, and probably would find it a lot harder to manage like a whole big team and then someone on work experience. Whilst like, I think if you're looking at music and culture, like Clash, some other magazines, like I'm trying to think of names, and My London and stuff, I'd also look at like regional and locals and stuff in terms of newspapers. Like, I don't think it's everyone's dream to like work at their regional or whatever, or their local title, but it's people in those positions that are going to give you a lot more time. You're going to have a much higher chance of getting a byline, stuff like that. And I think they're a lot more open to the idea of helping people right now in the current climate.
Hey, thanks very much as well. And just touching on, I think a couple of bits that all three of you just said there as well, you know, about things like pitching as well. So I think that's one of the questions that I wanted to ask there as well. So what are your tips for, I suppose, pitching and freelance pitching as well? And I think for, so this question is going to be twofold. So one, freelance pitching, and then secondly as well, though, for students that are, you know, going into potential jobs as well, or doing those pitches, how do they take on constructive criticism?
Collection. I mean, this matters to me. You know, saving as many lives as possible, seeing as many.
Oh, I think we're good.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, so we'll start with you, seeing as you're on the speaker screen there, Shan.
Oh, am I? Sorry, I was concentrating too much on trying to mute that.
No worries. I'll repeat that again. So basically, just a few tips for pitching, and then secondly, you know how kind of like almost first timers, you know, deal with that constructive criticism that may come with it.
God, I mean, the first time I got a pitch rejected, I was like, I think like if especially on Twitter and stuff, when you see a lot of people that are still quite new being very successful at it, you might tend to think, well, like, what was wrong with my pitch? Or you might even worse see someone that wrote something very similar for a similar publication and be like, well, why wasn't my pitch like good enough for this specific publication? It just doesn't work like that. Like, it really doesn't. Like, an editor will have like one of 10 different reasons why they said no. It could be budget, it could be that it's not quite timely enough. So my advice would be know the publication first. I think being an editor of a smaller publication myself that's like very, very kind of amateurish, you can so tell when someone's just sent something to like 10 different places and hasn't read it yet. So know the publication, be concise, don't be too wordy, because the editor simply won't read it if they've got 100 of those ideas coming in every day. And also like care about what you're writing. I think you can so tell. Like, I know when I've pitched something that I don't necessarily like, I'm less bothered about than another pitch maybe. And I think editors can see that. And my successful pitches have been pitches where it's something I really want to write and I've researched the hell out of it and it's like gone well. So that would be my 2 cents.
Thanks, Shan. And Poppy?
Yeah, so I was never very good at the freelancing life, I'll be honest. It was not my talent. But when I was like pitching to editors, I think like Shan said, keep it as short as possible. Like, they just won't read longer emails. There's no nice way to say it, but they just won't read it all. So like, I think of a headline to go with your story, that will help. And make sure that like, you know, like Shan said as well, care about what like you're pitching, and if you're the right person to write it. If it's a particularly like, you know, divisive or like emotional issue, then do you have a link to that story, you know, and why are you the best person like equipped to write it? Do you have personal life experience, or do you have case studies that you can use? Maybe have like some data or case studies to back it up when you go in, so it's not just like, oh, I think coronavirus is like bad for jobs, there is my pitch, you know, because like it's just what does it mean? So have some stuff like ready to back it up. And I think I'm probably better to talk about like pitching once you get into a job, because like I said, I was never very good at pitching freelancing. It's just, I'm not organized enough for it. But when you get into a job, I think just know like your audience properly, you know, and know who you're writing for, and make sure that you read like all different places. So I'll wake up like at like 5:30, 6 every morning. This makes me seem so efficient. Like, I am not at all. I just don't sleep because I drink so much Coke Zero. But yeah, I'll wake up at like 5:30, 6 every day, listen to Radio 4 for like 2 hours every morning, read like 4 papers. So I'll read the Telegraph, now I work there, and the Times and the Guardian, to like get the range, and like steal stories from other places, not as in like plagiarize them, but you know, a story that's on like page 10 of the Times might be 1 paragraph long and they haven't elaborated on it. So you put that and think, oh, actually, I'd do this a different way. I'd contact this person that they haven't phoned, and then do that and then pitch that to an editor, because it's in the news and it's newsworthy, but you can do it better. You know, so I think that's definitely a good tip, to like just make sure you read everywhere and know who you're writing for. Like Shan said, I imagine editors get pitches that have been sent to 10 different national papers, all with different alignments and different readerships, and it just won't fit for places, you know. Like, if you're pitching, you know, if it's like a piece about TikTok, you best to pitch it to ID or Vice or, you know, Dazed, and places that are going to fit that readership. You're probably not going to get any luck pitching it to, I don't know. I mean, Telegraph's really good with social stuff now, but you know, you're not going to have much luck pitching it to like a finance publication. So just know who you're writing for and know who their readership is, and make sure you're putting a bit about yourself, who you are, why you're the best person to write it. And maybe, like, I don't ever really put like attachments to other articles, but I suppose you could put a link maybe to just like your 1 or 2 best stories, just to show them, and a link to your Twitter as well. I think that helps.
Thanks, Poppy, and then on to Zoya. So just a bit about pitching and also dealing with that constructive criticism that may come with it.
Mm-hmm. So I've been freelancing for a few months, not particularly long, so I'm pretty new to it all. So what I would say is definitely consider your sell and your angle. Make sure it's, you know, concise, to the point. Translate that in the length of your email. I typically go for like 200 to 250 words. You don't want to give an essay. And when we get pictures, if it's super long, I won't read it all. And attachments, file attachments, don't do that. Do hyperlinks, because, you know, I have let's say, so many news stories to do in the morning and features in the afternoon, I do not have time to go through a bunch of extra documents. Also, one thing I like to do, which I think gets to the point really quickly, is, you know, make sure there's a sentence or a line in your pitch that gets to the point like very quickly. It doesn't have to be long, and I bold it, embolden it even so like you can see it straight away. When you look at the pitch, your kind of line of gaze like goes straight to that, and if you read it, it's essentially a summary of your whole pitch. So hypothetically, if the editor didn't want to read the whole thing, they kind of know what it is anyway. I would say hyperlink if it's like a data thing, or, you know, I do a few TikTok pieces for Vice and ID, and I always hyperlink to like the content and stuff, because it gives them an insight into like the trend or whatever it is, or the skateboard crew or like artists, whatever. I would say if you are going to kind of repackage your pitch, and let's say it doesn't work at Vice and you want to don't try Vice and ID, because they'll realize, but try somewhere else. I don't know, like Independent or somewhere. Adapt it to said publication. Don't think, you know, you can literally copy and paste, because you can't. Editors will kind of suss that out. So tailoring to publication is a good shout. And also, one bit of advice is, when you're new, you're kind of cautious about fees. I was too, but like, you are getting paid for your work, and it's your time and it's your effort, it's your research. So you are allowed to get paid accordingly. And if you think it's worth more, you know, suggest it. At worst, they'll say no. At best, they'll probably compromise or agree. And if you're paid late, there's a thing you can add to the bottom of your invoice, which I found out pretty late. And it's basically like a clausal kind of thing, which says if after so many days you haven't been paid, you can follow up and get paid a late fee. And a lot of my journo friends do that, and you're completely within your rights. It's a kind of a legal thing as well. So treat it as your business and don't spend too long on it, because if you spend like hours on a pitch, you know, that's your time, and your money is your time. So I'd say try and be efficient with that as well.
Yeah,
I like that as well, especially that bit, basically kind of like if you've got one pitch, it's not a case of one size fits all for each and every kind of like publication or, you know, area in the industry that you go to, as well. Again, I am a bit mindful of the time, but we're going to carry on. We'll try and get in the 3 questions that some of the guests have put in there as well, if everyone's okay with it as well.
Yeah.
Well, it's Florence has asked this question: when did you know what part of journalism you'd be interested in or work in, especially with you know, being a student? Did you know during elements of your final year, or did you try different things, you know, until you decided that's the part of journalism I want to do? Shen?
Oh, sorry. I thought.
Sorry, go on, Poppy.
Go.
Go on.
Yeah, I was going to start because I am like the most random journalist person ever. So I didn't know. I still don't really know. I do a bit of everything. But when I was at uni, so when I was at Leeds, I was like I did only music for the student paper. So I didn't do any news at all at uni. And then I think I started doing news in final year of uni for the Independent. But that was more like environment and politics stuff. So it wasn't, you know, like on the ground news reporting. But I've always loved music and culture. But I think as I did my NCTJ, that made me more of a news reporter. But even like, I think just keep yourself open. Business, I'd never considered doing. And then I applied for the Bloomberg internship, got it, and was like, oh no, I need to learn something about business. I failed GCSE maths 4 times. Like, I'm not a finance person at all, you know. So I think just keep yourself open to everything, and you find so many niches. Like, I never would have considered business when I was like 19 at uni. I would have thought, oh, that'd be so boring. But it's so like good to get scoops, and you find out so much more about politics and like economics and history, and, you know, like everything dissects. Like, a really good business story is also a really good community story, because at the end of the day, if like all the businesses are closing, people can't eat, you know, and like people's families are suffering. So everything crosses over, and like, I think always keep an open mind. But yeah, I still don't know. So like at Telegraph, we do like placements within the paper for the 2 years of the grad scheme. So across like sports, which is probably my least knowledgeable area in the world, and then news, features and business. But I'm like quite looking forward to doing all of them. I think they all intersect, you know, like every story has different angles that can be adapted to other places. And yeah, I think it's good to keep an open mind. But obviously, if you have got like, you know, something that you really honed in on, my brain's just a bit scattered, so it's like I've never been able to concentrate on one thing. But if you have got one thing, do it. find a niche, because that will like get you in good stead with publications. But yeah, keep an open mind. That's my advice.
And Shan?
I'm pretty much in agreement with like everything Poppy just said. I'm trying to think about anything like original to kind of add to that. I would say, yeah, like don't limit yourself. I started yesterday a sustainable living publication with Yoni's Living. I never thought I'd be doing something like that, but I think it's going to be really fun. I think it's going to be a new challenge. Like for student journalists particularly, I think even if there's something you really like writing about, there's no harm in having a good news background, because a good news background you can then shoehorn into like as many different topics as you like. So when I was looking for work experience at the Times Foreign Affairs desk, I was able to just like shoehorn some student journalism news stuff that had that kind of spin and be like, I've written about this before. In the same vein, I've been somewhere else and done politics, and could then do the same thing with other news stories that had more of a politics like spin. So I think for anyone writing at student publications now, even if there's something you really like, I really like writing about music and culture, but I think it's good to keep an open mind, because you learn so much. You learn like so much, and I think if you keep yourself in too much of a box, you're limiting yourself. I don't know though, because I've heard mixed advice. Like I've heard other professionals at these sorts of talks I've attended say like, find something you're really good at and run with it. But I think as far as the job market is concerned right now, that maybe isn't possible. So I think keep an open mind, and you never know. You'll always be able to transfer those skills into other kind of areas of journalism. You do. Sorry, I've just seen a small question from Eloise. I just emailed, and I don't know the email off the top of my head, but if you want to follow me on Twitter or something, or like email me after this, I can send it to you, because they just have like a desk manager, and there's loads of different desks you can do. I mean, when the world's normal again, you can do news, foreign affairs, entertainment stuff. So DM me or email me and I'll give you the email.
Just the background for everyone there as well. So basically, the question was whether Shan applied for the work experience at the Times, specifically as an application, just to email them as well.
And I think that applies to basically everywhere. I've never got work experience off a formal scheme. I know The Guardian do a formal scheme, which I've heard is really good, but I've never been successful on it. Anywhere I've ever done work experience, I've just emailed and asked.
Yeah,
So.
I think the Times, I probably did the same as Sham, but I think it was like work experience at thetimes.co.uk.
It's like a.
I think, yeah, maybe there's a dash in it, but you'll be able to find it on Google. And Enemy as well, I think, was like work experience at enemy.com. But The Guardian's formal. It's like a full-on job application for work experience, but it is good, so yeah.
Okay, I'm going to try and. Sorry, go on. Who was that?
Me.
Go on, Zoya. Sorry.
It's all right. Yeah, Enemy. Mine was slightly different. We got a contact through City, and then I just emailed an editor, and I got it that way. To add about what you know and what you want to do, mine's slightly different to everyone. I got told the opposite, to be a bit more open-minded, and I was stubbornly like, no, I'm going to do music, and I stuck with it. And I mean, City was incredibly helpful because, you know, news is fundamental, and the skill set that I built, I know how to translate that into press releases, or like if we get sent them, I can spin that into a news piece about an album dropping or a new single or like a tour or whatever. Or if like, I don't know, like the Halsey thing where she announced she's pregnant, we needed that news piece really quick. So my editor was like, can you do it? And we had to do a quick turnaround because, you know, news goes quick on socials. And so I took what I knew and that skill set and translated it into a music kind of side of things. But I would say, despite saying that, do be open-minded. So like, I thought I would join Gay Times and just do strictly music and digital covers and whatever else. But the first big piece I did was with a skateboarder, a trans skateboarder, and it was all about trans politics and identity and, you know, the sport realm, which I didn't think I would be doing. So it's great to have like that big interest and definitely lead with that kind of intuition, but definitely consider being kind of adaptable to other areas as well.
I like that. It basically seems like the running theme, from the three of you there as well. There was, like a particular specialism or niche is fine, but definitely do, especially in times like this, keep an open mind as well. Yeah, good. Again, I'm definitely now mindful of time as well with the awards coming up as well. So I'm going to end this on one last question, and it's from Maeve, who's thanked the panel for all this advice as well. So basically, just wondering if you had any first journo job do's or don'ts. So what would your kind of like first journo job do's and don'ts be?
Well, this is my first job, so I could give you plenty of those. But one is imposter syndrome, and don't be don't beat yourself up about it. Don't think, oh, why did I get this job? If you don't, that's great. If you do, like me, don't, because it's hard, especially like with the lack of representation and kind of diversity and like being QPOC and stuff. You don't necessarily see yourself, so that was an issue for me personally. But I think it does kind of feed into the sense of you may feel kind of intimidated or whatever. So even in freelancing, like you've got a good skill set, just give it a try, whatever it is. Don't be afraid to try. If you get criticism or if you get rejection, I mean, I do, we all do. I know established editors that do. So it's just part of learning. And I think take every kind of negative or rejection or whatever as an opportunity to learn or try again or take a lesson from it. And try and distance yourself from it. Don't take it personally. And in terms of specific jobs, do's and don'ts, I would say, whether it's the application or whatever, just try and like psych yourself up and convince that you can get it, because I know plenty of people that don't apply out of fear that, it's the Guardian or it's the Times or whatever it is. And, I could never write for them, but like I thought I could never write for NME. And I freelance for them sometimes, and I still think that's pretty cool. But, it's easy to kind of talk yourself down. So yeah, have a bit of faith in yourself, as cheesy as that sounds.
Great, thank you. So moving on to Shan.
I couldn't agree more. I think actually at the indie, I'd always heard about people talk about imposter syndrome when it comes to journalism, but like in my kind of trajectory so far, I've always kind of felt like you've done everything right, like you kind of, it's fine that you're here, it's not too bad, like you deserve this almost because you've worked for it, right? But then I got to the indie and like was by far the least experienced person there, and then suddenly it like hit me like a ton of bricks, and I was like, oh my god, what am I doing here? Like, who let me in? And that was really weird and really alarming feeling. And I think similar to what Zoya was saying, I think one of the best ways to overcome it is like, would you a couple of years ago be like really pleased with what you're doing right now? And like, would it feel right for you what you're doing right now? And like the answer like normally would be yes, I would hope. And it definitely is for me. So I'm like trying to work around that and trying to get over the fact that like I am like the least experienced person in the room, the virtual room. So so yeah, it's a weird one. Definitely back yourself more, because like if you don't, someone with less experience than you is going to do it anyway and like get that opportunity, and maybe that opportunity should have been yours. So I think that's kind of the mindset I'm having to like drum into myself over the past few months, because it was a weird shift, I think, from like doing what I've been doing for a few years, either for free or kind of very sporadically, to like your first proper paid journalism job. As far as don'ts are concerned, I don't really know. I haven't encountered any yet. I wonder if being in an office environment would change that somewhat. But I haven't encountered any yet, really. I don't think there's been any missteps. Be really mindful of like media law and stuff, because I've seen that get people into trouble. Yeah, just be nice to people. Don't be a dick. Probably be
we'll get that one on Twitter.
Yeah.
I think this would be really good to do again, once you're all on the panel have kind of like gone into either the office or whatever particular environment it is that you'll be working in, just to see if there are any nuances or differences as well. Just going to move on to Poppy now as well.
Yeah, I think to add to both of like the imposter syndrome things, it is definitely a factor of journalism. Like I've been doing placements now for like 4 or 5 years at like these traditionally like posh, big, massive national papers, and I'm just like this brummie from a council estate, But at the end of the day, you deserve to be there, If you've worked hard, you deserve to be more like there as much as anybody else in the room. I think it's just you have to get that into your own mentality, and that can be quite hard, but I think just really big yourself up, and know that you're a good writer, and know that you have good ideas and they're worth something, and you've got different experience to other people that can be used to like, change journalism. So that's definitely a good thing. And yeah, I was going to say don't be a dick as well. I think that's just be nice to people, and like, don't say no to anything. If somebody asks you to do something, as long as obviously it's within reason, say yes, and say yes excitedly, be excited to try different things and throw yourself into stuff that's like out of your comfort zone. And yeah, just say yes to everything, be nice to people, like help people out. Like if somebody asks you for advice, don't view it competitively, and like be like, oh, okay, wanting to steal my story or whatever, just like help them, because like that's just what good people do, and you're going to make friends that way. And at the end of the day, friends in the industry are going to be 10 times more useful than one scoop that you piss somebody off by getting. So yeah, that would be my big one.
Can I just quickly add something? I know you're conscious of time, but in terms of the saying yes to everything, I would say take it with a pinch of salt. An editor at Garden told me this, and I live by it. And it's like, kind of know what you want to take. And also, there's a thing that happens with new journals where everything is opinion oriented, and like, don't sell your trauma. You don't have to.
Yeah.
Especially like minority kind of writers and stuff. But I feel like it's transferable to anybody. But you don't have to sell your story like to get a byline, and it's definitely not worth it because the emotional kind of toll it can take. I did one ages ago when I first started out, and at the time I convinced myself, it's great, it's a byline, you get paid. I think it was my first paid piece, and I talked myself kind of into it, but now I look back and I was like, was it necessary? Did I have to do that? So while like, yes, take every opportunity, also kind of be mindful of, would you be content with said opportunity like 2 or 3 years down the line? Do you think it's necessary? And if you don't, speak to the editor and just be like, they're talking to you for a reason. Suggest something else, or try and rework the angle that you will be more comfortable with. If hopefully that makes sense.
I also wanted to add to that too, because I think it's a really interesting like spin on the say, because you should, in your professional capacity, do try and say yes to as many opportunities as possible. But I agree, Zoya, like I remember about 2 years ago, Sean Fay, who is obviously incredible, was like, don't like tell HuffPost about your biggest trauma for £75 in a byline. It's just not worth it.
Yeah.
Like the worst thing that's ever happened to you is not worth £75, just so you can say, hey, I wrote for HuffPost or Metro, or like a series of those sorts of publications that do very good work, but they are very keen to pay new young writers to like talk about all sorts of things. So yeah, I think all of us have probably been in that position where you do get a bit desperate and think maybe, but like it's just not worth it. I don't think
it's not. Like a money, or just for like people talking to you about it after, like if an editor brings it up in a job interview and go, oh, you wrote this piece for HuffPost, and you don't want to talk about something traumatic, in an interview, it brings it back up for yourself. And also like Twitter, like you post something controversial on Twitter, it's already hard for you to talk about, and then bam, you go viral and you've got thousands of trolls. Like think to yourself, have I got the emotional capacity for that? And is it worth is it worth it? Yeah.
Great. That was fantastic. Just want to say thanks. I think on behalf of the SPA, and I think all of the guests here to our panel as well. I think we could have let this run for I don't know how long as well, because I think there were so many different questions, and I think so many different areas as well, though. And hopefully it's been fantastic kind of like help, tips and advice for the people that have been on here today as well. So like I said, just big thanks to you all on the panel as well. It's really appreciated you taking the time to talk to us here as well. just a quick announcement as well, and this is the reason why I was a bit mindful of time as well. Obviously, as part of the southeast region here at the SPA, just a reminder for all of you that are here as well that we've got the Southeast Regional Awards. It's coming up on our Twitter in 4 minutes time, so it's all kicking off on Twitter at 8 o'clock. So it's at SPA Journalism, and that's just something to watch out for. Obviously, if you've been nominated as well, so keep an eye out for that. Don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add before we close here, Shan.
I just wanted to say to anyone that's attended today that it's been really fun, and I hope everyone got something from it. I think this is our 5th kind of talk / panel of the day. We've had a big variety of people, and I'm really glad that we could end on this note. I think it's been really great, and thank you obviously to Zoya and Poppie for taking their time to do it.
No worries. Thanks for asking. Yeah, and I dropped a message in the chat thing. If anyone has any questions, feel free to find me. Yeah, I'll chuck my email in there actually real quick before it ends.
Yeah. I'll probably be a bit less rambly as well on like message. I'm not a speaker. So.
Yeah, I think it's been really useful. Yeah, guys, feel free to put your contact details in the message bit, and yeah, and
I think that's the point. One of the main points to take away as well. It's all about kind of like communication, and I think kind of like just make sure that you stay in touch, and if you do have any questions, then get in touch with the panel. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Right then, thanks very much, and like we said, keep an eye out on at SPA Journalism at 8 o'clock for the Southeast Regional Awards. And once again, just to end on, thanks very much to our panel. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.